Hello everyone, and welcome to a new episode of the best Reddit answers being read to you. Enjoy! What's the most wholesome experience you've had with a stranger? I'm a wheelchair user. At a baseball game, a little girl came running up to me and climbed onto my lap. Her mom was apologetic, but I told her it was fine, no worries. Looking at the girl's face, I could tell she had some kind of developmental disability. Mom explained to me that the little girl's grandfather used a wheelchair and she missed him. I rolled around a little to give her a ride. She giggled and had a good time, then she climbed off and went back to her mom. Seems to me like her mom would also describe this as the most wholesome experience she's had with a stranger. It's definitely the most wholesome thing I've read this week. I had a knock on my door, and when I opened it, there was a stranger with a gift card to a local garden store for me. Apparently her kid had been pinching tulips from my garden every day to give to his mom, and they wanted to pay for them once they figured out whose garden they were coming from. I had thought squirrels were doing it and had regretted planting them the year before, not being able to enjoy them. I spent the gift card on more bulbs. He was stealing them for his mom. That's kind of sweet. Yes, I wasn't mad at all. I had just lost my job and my dad had his card stolen. He was waiting on the bank but completely out of food and living in an old, run-down RV. I would have figured something out. I'd die before I let him starve. Right as he's almost in tears talking to me about it, someone knocked on the door. A lady had food for someone in an RV, but those people had vacated the parking lot and she wanted to know if my dad needed any. Some sort of local helping hands org. There was everything from canned goods, to fresh meat, milk, pasta. Everything. She had bought it with her own money and didn't want it to go to waste. I'll never forget the timing, or her generosity. A little bit, I hope/believe that she knew your dad was in need and was generous enough to offer this assistance in a way that seemed like happenstance rather than someone observing them struggling. Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon just came out in theaters. I had been planning to go see it on my next day off. I didn't have a car, so relied on the bus. The day of the movie came and there was a snowstorm. I walked downtown to get the bus, but there was a sign saying all buses canceled due to snow. I was super bummed out and walked over to the local coffee shop. I ordered a coffee and was telling the owner how disappointed I was that I couldn't get to the movies. There was an older woman sitting in the shop and she overheard us. She looked at me and said, "I really want to see that movie too. Let's go, I'll drive." So that the day me and a perfect stranger went out to lunch and to see a movie together. About a year later I started seeing this guy in town, and his downstairs neighbor was the lady who took me to the movies all those months earlier. We had stopped by her house for her to get a sweater before the movies. I told the guy, "Me and your neighbor went to see Crouching Tiger together." He was like, "That was you?" She went on and on about how cool it was to go to the movies. On my honeymoon in Greece, we nearly got stranded driving our little scooter back from a day trip. Finally found a petrol station in this village, but it was during afternoon nap/siesta time. We apologized as best we could in the little Greek we knew. The guy obliged but looked a little annoyed. He casually asks where we are from and we tell him New Zealand. His face lights up and is amazed because he had never met someone from NZ before. He asks us what are we doing so far away from home. We tell him that it's our honeymoon. He tells us to wait there and comes back with a bottle of wine that's obviously worth more than the €6 of petrol we are buying. He refuses for us to round up the bill or for us to buy anything. He just tells us honeymoon is honeymoon, be happy, go. Hands down one of the best highlights of our trip. When I was 16, I'd taken my mom's old Pontiac Bonneville to the movies and I was in such a hurry that I forgot to turn off the lights. When I came out, the car was dead, but someone left a set of jumper cables on the hood with a note that said, "I hope you make it home safely." I've never ever forgotten about that. Since then I've tried to pay that kindness forward any way I can. Phones were affordable, so that person saved me that night. For those asking, I'm assuming the person came out and saw my lights on and maybe even saw them running low/flickering and knew there was a possibility they would burn out before I made it back to my mom's car. Even if my battery hadn't died, it was a nice gesture. This is a lovely story, but holy crap, as soon as I saw jumper cables I was expecting the next line to be, "And then my dad beat me with them." A few years ago, I was experiencing deep depression. My life was a mess, my apartment was a mess, I was a mess. For a moment, I decided to just go to the park and sit for a while, as I was really at the end of my rope and had zero idea on what to do. Out of nowhere, A kid, possibly about 3 or 4 years, comes and hands me 3 yellow dandelions and runs back to her mom. I don't know why, but I always remember that. That day, I went home and cleaned my apartment and made it more tidy. I wouldn't say that my life miraculously changed, but I will say that one moment of kindness, that neither the kid nor the mom probably remember, was one of the most memorable moments in my life. When I was 18, I had a friend in the hospital with brain cancer. His time was limited. I visited him when I could. He was kind of hippie alternative punk. I wore a leather jacket and had long hair. I walked to his room, a nurse saw me. Without saying a word, she walked to me and gave me a long comforting hug. That's how I knew he passed. That's a very sweet and gentle way of telling someone about another person's passing. It was exactly what I needed. I guess this can be perceived as pathetic by some people, and that's okay, but I used to go to school with a bunch of horrible people. I'm disabled, so I look and walk weird. Every time I'd go out for lunch to my favorite food place and see them, they'd hurl insults. Anyway, I was standing in a long queue and they were behind me. There was an old lady, maybe like 70 to 80, behind them. They were making fun of my walk. I sorta can't walk straight BC. I had a stroke as a kid, and this old lady called them a bunch of cruel twats. It was really kind of her to stand up to them. I always will remember that. I'm a dwarf and I've had similar experiences. People can be so crafty. I actually just shared a similar anecdote on another thread where some teenagers started throwing empty food packaging at me. They had been filming me and I called them out for it, when this lady came charging to the rescue, yelled at them to leave me alone and bought me a coffee. When a complete stranger puts themselves on the line like that for you, it's amazing. It's a shame it has to happen at all, but the fact that some people step up, just reminds me that there's hope for humanity yet. I was in London and was supposed to be flying home that day. Walking down the street with my 2 suitcases towards the tube station nice and early on my way to Heathrow with plenty of time. Silly me didn't realize that when the sign said there is going to be a tube strike on the day you fly home, that means the tube is completely closed. I thought it just meant delays or something. I don't know. I start walking toward the bus station a few blocks away, desperately trying to come up with a plan B. A young man comes up to me and offers to help carry my suitcases. He asks where I'm going, and I say Heathrow, which is an hour away at this point in time until my flight is running short. It starts raining. He says you'll never make it there on time on the buses. He calls me a cab, then finds a little awning where we can sit and wait for the cab and stay out of the rain. He lets me use his phone to transfer money to pay for the cab. Mine didn't have service outside my home country. We just sat and chatted for 30 minutes waiting for this cab, and he made me feel so much less panicked. I just couldn't believe the kindness he showed to some random person on the street, and I've never been able to find him again online to thank him. I was in Walmart one day and some dude was blocking the aisle where the item I needed was located. I then heard him ask a Walmart employee where the cabinet liners were. She proceeded to say she wasn't sure and started to send him to the wrong location. I nosily piped up, "I know where they are. If you want to follow me, I will take you to them because I just bought some last week." The man, "Oh, okay. Thank you." He followed me to the opposite side of the store and I showed him where they were. He thanked me again and I hurried back to the other side of the store to get what I needed. 5 minutes later at the self-checkouts, the man showed up and I saw him just hanging around with his bag of purchases on his arm. When it came time to pay, he stepped up and insisted on paying for my items. I thanked him profusely. At the time I only had $35 in my bank account and was trying to purchase food for the week. This man who I was so annoyed with helped me so much. I still tear up when I think of his kindness. I am a single mother of 2 wonderful kids and this was my miracle. The most wholesome and memorable experience was in a crowded New York airport with an elderly lady. I saw her crying and looking bewildered as she sat alone in the main concourse. So I sat down next to her and asked if I could help. She said she was going to a family member's funeral on the West Coast and had never been in an airport. The lady was hard of hearing and the loudspeaker announcements just compounded her confusion, to the point where she was physically trembling. At that point, as I once noted here in AskReddit, I guided her through security and directly to her gate, asking the attendants to give her special assistance, especially with her inability to discern broadcast announcements. As an attendant escorted her for boarding, the lady turned, waved, and blew a kiss in my direction. To this day, I can still picture her vividly. I was going to a Starbucks to eat with a friend I met days ago. Suddenly a stranger about my age asked me how to go to that exact same place, so I told him that I was going there too and we started a conversation while walking. When we got to the Starbucks, we sat at different tables and I waited for my friend. He didn't appear, because he had had some problems and finally he couldn't go. I asked the stanger if I could eat with him and he accepted. Now we are friends and we sometimes talk through our mobiles. What would have been your answer or question? Leave it in the comments below. Slap that like and subscribe button for more, and check out the link in the video description for even more answers. Peace out, and catch you in the next video.